Did you start really diving into the world of exercise because of Richard Simmons at a young age?
I took a complete liking and just obsession with Richard Simmons when I was a little girl. And I would go along with his workouts on TV every day.
You've built a Gold's Gym in Tampa that is so content creator friendly.
We have some pretty mega influencers coming to our gym. And one of our visitors posted in there that went viral, and it's got about 17 million views on it.
All right. We're going to get to all of that in just a moment. But first, I want you to know how grateful I am for today's podcast sponsor, my friends at FitAF Nutrition. They are Eastern Pennsylvania's leading meal prep company. FitAF offers meals of multiple sizes for people with various health goals. And you know what I love about this company? They use high-quality ingredients like grass-fed meats, wild fish, and locally harvested produce. And all right, for you parents on the go, they even offer family meals. Go to fitafnutrition.com,
Place your order by Thursday at midnight.
and get fresh, prepared meals delivered right to your door on Sunday.
Use code Leckey20 at checkout to get 20% off your first order of 7 meals or more.
Here we go, buddy.
It's the Ryan Leckey Show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ryan Leckey Show. I am super stoked for today's guest. This woman is all things fitness, business, breaking barriers, and then some. I first met Kimberlee Curtis, who's with me on the podcast, in Tampa many, many months ago. And when I started hearing your story, I'm like, first of all, more people need to hear about your journey because you have such an amazing story to tell. Opening this insane, incredibly creative Gold's Gym Tampa facility, how you put it inside this amazing structure that I'll have you describe, but just really being the, from what I understand, only female team who owns a Gold's Gym franchise, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Well, first of all, Kimberlee, thanks so much for hanging out with me for a little bit. I mean, gosh, you
Of course.
were
Happy to be here.
you were a
for
force
bit.
of yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. There was a weird delay. You're such a force of inspiration. When I started talking to you, when I visited your gym, I was there in Tampa for work, and you start telling me how you got into this and how you got into fitness. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, more people need to hear your story. So before we get to this amazing, not only fitness facility, community space you have created and how you're really innovating and blowing up parts of Tampa in the greatest way possible, I want to hear your journey. Like, how did you fall in love with fitness? And then we'll get to how you opened this incredible one-of-a-kind Gold's Gym.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to tell the story. So I'm happy to be on the show. So yeah, I first stepped foot inside of a Gold's Gym 22 years ago now. And at that time, I had never lifted a weight. I didn't know anything about bodybuilding. I was completely, it was completely new to me. A friend took me to a Gold's Gym in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she was a member there. And it was predominantly men at that time. It wasn't nearly as many women in there bodybuilding as there are today, but there was only a few of us, but she was a serious bodybuilder and kind of introduced me to the world of bodybuilding in Cincinnati. So that's how I came to know the Gold's brand and what kind of started my fitness journey 22 years ago. I'd always played sports before that, but there was just no such thing as female weightlifting and training for sports and athletics when I was in, junior high and high school. It just didn't exist.
And obviously, I'm super excited you're a dog person too. So Nola decided to jump in on this interview.
She did. She wants to say hello. She says, hi, guys.
I love that. So let's talk, Kimberlee, going back into your passion for fitness, right? So you start getting involved in fitness, really at a Gold's Gym where not a lot of women were weightlifting. But be honest, did you start really diving into the world of exercise because of Richard Simmons at a young age?
Oh, you know what? You know that story.
I did my homework.
So sure did. So that's right. So from the time I was I was the little bitty thing. I was 3-4 years old, and I took a complete liking and just obsession with Richard Simmons when I was a little girl. And every morning, as soon as I would get up, my feet would hit the floor, and I would come out to the living room, and I would tell my mom. I would just look at her and say, Richard Simmons, mommy, Richard Simmons. And she would turn him on every morning. And I would go along with his workouts on TV every day. And it was, yeah, I was pretty obsessed with him for a couple years.
I'm going to be honest. I think we're kindred spirits because I did something very similar when I was growing up. And then, of course, for many Halloweens, I dressed as Richard Simmons.
Oh my God, I love that. That's great. He was so awesome.
So take me through, before we even get to you kind of blazing a trail, right, in the fitness gym world, right? You fall in love with just weightlifting in general. Like, but what was ultimately your first career? Was it in fitness or was it something else?
No, I'd never worked in fitness at all in any way, shape, or form until I opened this gym. So it was just a passion and a hobby for me before this. But no, my career started as a construction project manager. I actually graduated college with a degree in construction, business and construction, and started as a public infrastructure project manager. So I would manage roads and highways and bridges and underground utility systems and all kinds of things like that. And worked on some large projects in Cincinnati, managed a huge riverfront development project up there, managed about 500 million in construction in Cincinnati before I moved to Tampa. So my first career was really construction management. I did that for, oh gosh, probably about 15 years before I ended up getting my real estate license here in Florida.
And would you say the construction industry you're in for many years, right? And from what I read, I mean, some of these projects that you mentioned and what you did, I mean, you were crushing it. Was that also really a male-dominated field?
Oh, for sure. So, I was the only female manager on this $500 million project. And it was, I was on the same job site for almost 10 years for this project. And I was the only female manager that ever stepped foot on that project. We had some senior executives with the development company that were female, but as far as being on the job site and managing the actual construction, no, I was the only one.
What was your day-to-day like? Did you feel like you have to prove yourself every day?
It was interesting. I think at first maybe a little bit, but the Midwest is pretty evolved actually when it comes to these things. And I honestly didn't face near the obstacles being in a male dominated industry in the Midwest as I have in Florida, believe it or not. So it's been far more challenging here, but no, up there, I think once they realized that, I knew what I was doing and, I knew what I was talking about, I really never got questioned at all up there on the project. My guys were great. And, the owners of the projects were great. And it was definitely a more accepting culture of women in that role up there than I really faced in Florida.
So you leave Ohio, you go to Florida, and then you're like, I'm going to work in real estate.
Kinda. So I actually got moved here for a job in construction. There was a large hospital system here that was doing a large expansion project, building a lot of new hospital buildings and things like that. So I got recruited away when my project was over and done in Cincinnati, and they brought me down here and I managed this hospital expansion project for about a year. I was under a contract, and during that time it was to be frank, it was a struggle. It really was. It was definitely a very, very strong mentality of like that good old boys in the construction department there, and they had their own facilities department and everything, and just were not open and welcoming to women in management roles there at all. And it was a struggle for about a year. And I just, at the end of it, I had the choice to renew my contract or you move on. And I ultimately chose to get my real estate license and move on and work for myself.
And tell me what that was like, because did you sell commercial, residential, and were you still like heavily involved in the fitness world then? Like at least working out for yourself?
As a hobby, yes. Definitely. So once after I started bodybuilding and working out, it never stopped. I mean, I go, 5 days, 6 days a week. I would go and really never missed. I mean, if I traveled, my hotels I would make choices of where I stayed based on where the closest gym was. Right. So things like that, I would schedule, travel days and, and times to be able to work out before I traveled or after. And, so yeah, it's always been a big part of my life. And so fitness it's always been in the background, I think as a hobby, but never considered it as a career path at all until this opportunity came up.
Yeah. And let's talk about that opportunity. So you do real estate, right? Are you still selling houses now still?
So I started in residential for the first little bit, for the first couple of years, just to kind of, learn the industry. There's a lot to know there. There's to get good at, contract law and, understand all of that. It takes a little time. So I did residential for a couple of years, and I moved strictly to commercial. So now I only strictly do commercial real estate. So I do have a few clients still that I've held on to and kept. The other ones I've generally referred out when I get new business for the most part. Just because of my time that it takes to run this gym. So, but yeah, I still do a little bit of commercial real estate here and there. I do a couple deals a year still. So yeah, it's good. But I enjoy doing commercial deals because they're more complex, more interesting. They might take a long time to close, but you're dealing with professionals. It's just a completely different, world of real estate than residential.
And let's unpack this now, right? So you go from construction management in Ohio, you get to Florida, you're doing some of it. You realize, like, you know what? I'm tired of having to prove myself sort of in this male-dominated industry. I know what I'm doing here. And then you're selling real estate. At what point did you think it was this great idea, right? You're like, I'm going to open this insane, innovative, like, gym of the future and right here in Tampa. Like, how did this all come about?
It's crazy because when I think about it now, it's been, it's been 3 years since we first had our first conversation with Gainzz's already. So, honestly, I belonged to a Crunch Fitness here in the neighborhood, and it is smaller than my facility. And I went every day, and it's the only real strength training gym in downtown Tampa. And so there was definitely a hole in the market. And I realized one day I was just kind of sitting there working out, and I looked around and I was like, this place is crazy packed, and they don't have enough equipment. They don't have any space to expand. They're boxed in here. And because of the price point, people join, right? And they don't really think a thing about it. And it was just too much. And so I was just sitting there, and I thought, with all the new development coming here and all the people moving to Tampa and all the growth we're going to experience, somebody's got to open another gym. They just have to do it.
And so, Gainzz's Gym has such like a rich history, I mean, in the world, right? In the fitness world. So why pick that as a franchise versus just the Kimberlee Curtis gym?
So, I think for me, it was always my experience at a Gainzz's. I mean, when I would travel, I would visit Gainzz's gyms, and for me, it was the history, right? It was the longevity, the history, the presence in the market, what the brand represents. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the story of Joe Gainzz and, Arnold Schwarzenegger and all the other old school bodybuilders that used to work out there and, in Venice. And, so for me, it was, I knew the story. And, I sat with my business partners just a few days after I had this thought about somebody needs to open a gym. I was sitting with them because at the time we were getting ready to start a mixed use development project in St. Pete. And we were sitting there, and I told them, I said, somebody's got to open a gym. We should open a gym. They said, okay, what do we do? Because they're not in fitness at all. My business partners, they own a produce company in New Jersey, actually. So they're way far from the fitness world. They're starting to get a little more, into working out themselves, which is great. But they didn't know anything about it, and honestly, I didn't know anything about running a gym. I didn't even know where to start. So I mentioned to them, the Gainzz's Gym brand, and said, look, we can try to do something with our own brand, which just doesn't have the name recognition, right? You're starting from the ground up as far as getting people to know who you are and what you stand for. But when you come with a name like Gainzz's, and there's that longevity and the history and, so much, fanfare over the years that have to do with it. I mean, it's featured in movies and, TV shows and, all kinds of stuff. And when you come with that kind of brand power behind you, I think you're already several steps ahead in the process of becoming a success.
And when you look at the video and the space you created, I know it didn't happen overnight. So I think when people see what this looks like, because I'm kind of like you, like when I'm booking a vacation or a trip, I'm like, okay, where's the nearest gym? Where am I going to drop into, right? And then I walked into your place and I instantly felt like I had all these new BFFs because your staff was just incredible as were you. I guess, like, unpack the actual facility, because I walked in there, but I mean, it has such rich history. That was another thing that you're like, I'm going to make this unlike any other Gainzz's gym.
Yeah. So I think that was, a lot of it was, my business partners and I both, we have this mentality of, if you're going to do it right. And if you have any inklings at all about doing something halfway, just don't do it, and that's just not who we are. We're kind of all in or nothing sort of people. And that's just kind of how we roll. And so, we first started talking about this. We ended up on a discovery call with Gainzzz just a few days later after we initially talked about it. And, the more we discussed it, the more we talked about it, the more, I kind of shared with them my opinion of, if we're going to do this, it needs to be what Tampa is missing, right? Because there's just really not a fitness community here on a large scale. You have little pocket niche sort of studio fitness places here that do well and have a nice little community, but they're very niche, right? You've got spinning and you've got Pilates or whatever, but there just wasn't a strength training, large scale sort of fitness community location here in Tampa. So, for me, it was, this has to be a community, and it has to be a place where people come and don't want on the bench or sit on the equipment and sit on their phones the whole time because they're too concerned and too busy with actually working out and getting to know the person on the bench next to them and networking and, spending time getting to know one another and getting to know the staff and, finding commonalities with your peers there working out beside you. So that vision was a big part of it for me. So I knew that in order to create that, you kind of have to go all in on a project like this and be willing to really spend the money, the time, the effort. I mean, making the circuits, right? I mean, I've been on several podcasts, I've been on several local interviews. I kind of made my rounds before I did this and along the way while I was doing it to make sure that people understood we're not just building another gym here where we want people to just come sign up because we want your money. No, we want you to come in here. We want you to enjoy the space, get to know people, have a good time, sit and talk to our staff. We want you to be part of a family. And that was my vision for it from the beginning. And that's as important to me, if not more important than the number of members we have or any other part of it.
So it's called Gainzzz-Changing Tampa Gas Works, but there's such history in the building you went into. And how did your sort of commercial real estate experience and construction management really play into the role to take this vision and this dream of this facility that I still think so many people, I mean, I wish they were popping up everywhere, could really learn from? How did all that play a role into this, again, in another male-dominated industry?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not very many, female franchisees, as we touched on. And, so I knew going in that it was going to be challenging but I was ready. I've come from a background of working in male dominated industry. So I really wasn't intimidated by that part of it. And then especially once I got to know people at Gainzzz and got to know other franchisees, I knew that as far as the fitness community went, there wasn't going to be a judgment or, barriers put into my way by anyone else in the fitness community because I was female. It's a very inclusive place. And so that really wasn't, I first stepped into it thinking, okay, this is definitely gym ownership's definitely male dominated, but I really didn't experience any issues because of that. So for that, I'm grateful. But, to talk a little more about the building and everything, once my real estate background and construction, I mean, there's no way if I didn't have that I could have done this project. My business partners are in New Jersey. So, part of the deal was I find the building, I manage the design, I manage the GC and the construction and the build out and oversee the whole process. I pick all the equipment, I do all the travel, I handle all of it, right? It was, if I hadn't had a background in real estate, I probably wouldn't have had, and having spent a lot of time volunteering in the community, I probably wouldn't have had the contacts that I did to locate the building to start with. And if I didn't have a background in construction, I definitely would not have been able to sit and do kind of a design build process and work through a lot of value engineering and, honestly save us a lot of money on construction and stuff because I was able to sit with the architects and the engineers and the GC and find ways to, do this kind of large scale, very, fancy sort of strength training gym, for a little less money. So, I mean, I don't know how anyone can take on a project like this without having either experienced themselves in at least construction or having someone on their team that has experience with construction.
And when people, Kimberlee, hear Gold's Gym Tampa Gainzzz-Works. What is Gainzzz-Works? Because you mentioned about your volunteerism, and I know you're so big into revitalizing parts of Tampa. And it doesn't just always mean let's put a new gym in here. I know over your career, you were really passionate to say, how can we improve the community we live in? But what is Gainzzz-Works?
Sure. So yeah, I served on numerous boards over the past several years, kind of and they were all community improvement boards and committees that I was on. So very worthwhile. I don't really have the time to serve on those anymore now that I'm running this gym, but it was great. It was a great experience. Met a lot of people, and I've always been really passionate about community development, right? So, coming from a background of being in construction management, I worked for, municipalities. I worked for a county, worked for a park board, worked for a city, worked for a state, so I've always been passionate about, improving the space around us. And I think that it's just a continuous cycle of it. And, if you're not improving your community, then there's no growth, and there's not going to be growth. You might as well just say, well, we don't want you here. We don't want any growth here because we're not willing to put in the money to improve it or, expand it or put in new infrastructure or, whatever. So, I've always been really interested in that. So, if spending the time on these boards and stuff, like I mentioned, it helped a lot. I made a lot of connections and, networking and those types of things. So our building was owned by one of the area's largest developers. His name is Daryl Shaw. He owns a lot of buildings in Ybor. He owns a lot of property just outside of Ybor. So he's a huge developer here and has a great vision for Tampa. So the first parcels that he purchased, we are a part of that development, and it's called Gainzzz-Works because the original Tampa gas provider facility and building is located in the middle of this development, and it was called Gainzzz-Works. So he kept the name of that, for the development project, but it's a 50-acre redevelopment site. So he's got residential units there, office, hotel, some retail, and we are his largest tenant as far as retail goes. So we're kind of an anchor tenant, and we are one of the only two existing buildings that he's renovating and or brought tenants to keep in that development. Everything else was tearing down old stuff and building new things.
And the gym layout, what's the square footage of it? But back in the day, the history of the actual facility that the gym is in, what was that building?
Yeah, so it's roughly 25,000 square feet inside. We have about another 6,000 square feet of fitness space outdoors. But yeah, it was originally built as from what I understand, as a coin wrapping facility where, the banks and different places would bring all their loose coins in, and they would be rolled and shipped off to Treasury and all that to put back in circulation. And from what I understand, there was a lot of machines in there that sat around rolling coins all day. There was a couple of vaults, like large, full-size bank vaults in the building. One we were able to keep, and we've turned that into a posing room, which I think you went in there. And then one we had to get rid of because it was in the way of, a large portion of the space where we needed to put equipment. So, but yeah, the building was that. And then over time, I think it evolved, and there was a couple of other different tenants. And the most recent one before us was Loomis Armored Car Company would roll up their armored cars there and pull out pallets and pallets and pallets of cash from local banks and Publix grocery stores. And they would roll them in and put them in those big vaults and store cash there.
Yeah, crazy.
The building is built with a vault.
Yeah, it is. And the way you laid it out was so cool. So I think if somebody who really, you went and you said, I'm going to shoot my shot, revitalize a part of the city I love, which for you, it's Tampa, Florida. You open a gym, which is it's like a risk, right? Because sometimes it's like opening a restaurant. You don't know if people are going to buy in, if it's going to sell. What do you think? Because your gym is blowing up and it's so innovative. The space is crazy cool. What do you think gym owners are missing today across the country? Because gyms that are owned like mom and pop, if they're not a giant franchise, sometimes they can't stay open and sustain membership. What are people missing?
I think that creating a space that is content friendly is probably the number one thing you have to think of these days, because so many of our members, they're making a living while they're in our gym working out, right? So they're, recording their content, whether it's fitness instruction or they're, an ambassador or work for a clothing brand and they're doing a clothing shoot in there, or, whatever they're doing, they make their money working out now. And so much of that happens around you. I think that these gyms that, no filming, no selfies, all of that, eventually they're going to struggle to stay open. And I think that they're trying to fight a losing battle. And I think so you have to kind of keep that in mind of being, and I understand some people that come in our gym, they don't like the tripods and they don't like all that stuff, but it's just, this is the world we live in. We live in a social media driven world. And I think a lot of gym owners have to focus on that. And they have to understand that they've got to cater to those people, or they're not going to come and they're going to go somewhere else, because they're going to go. I think they appreciate the equipment, they appreciate the space, but they appreciate that their content looks good in the space they're working out in.
Yeah,
and
you're
I
not
think
kidding.
That's something, we really, no, right.
And that's I didn't mean to cut you off. There was another weird delay, Kimberlee. My apologies. I was going to say, I'm so glad you touched on the content creation, because I know when I walked into your space when I was dropping in Tampa, and I'm looking at the lighting and the different rooms, and I see people being able to film their content, because like you said, whether gym owners want to recognize it or not, some people are earning a living off of their social media channels, whether it's brand collaborations, partnerships with fitness companies, producing their own training programs. And I think your space, the one thing I'll say before people freak out and be like, oh my God, but I don't want cameras all around me. You have set boundaries and rules, like at your gym, that everyone does it so tastefully, and people are very respectful. When I was there, people are definitely looking around, making sure like, oh, I'm going to make sure I frame this shot so this person's not in it. And it can be done. And I think you're right. Like the gym owners who are not up on social media, who don't realize that content creation within gyms, like any facility, work, etc., is just as important. I think they're going to miss the mark. And these are the places struggling to have members.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you have to think about that as being a big part of the member base, because the primary demographic of gym members are, like 35 and under. And those are the people that are on social media the most, making their living, right? I mean, especially like these kids in their 20s, that's what they do. So if you want people who, make up the largest demographic of gym goers, you just have to give them what they want. Might not be something you understand or you're used to or care for on a personal level. But ultimately at the end of the day, if you want to be a successful business owner, you can't build it for what, you want as the business owner. You have to build what your audience wants. So they come and they pay their membership dues and you stay in business.
And I remember what you told me you were charging before, and I think your rates were I think you were looking at maybe tweaking the rates or whatever. And when I heard that, I go, oh my gosh, I thought I walked into this gym and I was like, I'd pay $300 a month to go here.
Yeah. We did actually increase rates a little bit, and we really just haven't had any pushback at all. And I think that's, as a new franchisee and it's our first club and, and all that, you kind of want to be careful not to price yourself out of the market when you're bringing something new in and you're not exactly sure how you're going to be received. I mean, we had so much, warm reception on social media and in the community that we knew, like, I was confident we were going to do. But at the same time, you don't want to price yourself to the point where you price yourself out of a local market either, when you just don't really know what to expect for your first time out of the gate. So, so our price points are, $100 to $120 a month right now. That's probably going to increase again at some point in the future. But right now that's where we are, and we're hovering right around 2,000 members at the moment, pretty close to it.
That's amazing. Did you guys publish, by the way, and you can answer this if you're comfortable, like what was the overall cost of this project to turn this vision into reality?
Yeah, so we did. It was, we spoke about that in the Business Journal, and we did an interview with them, before we opened. And with equipment all in, it was about $4 million investment.
Wow. What would you say to somebody, Kimberlee, who might approach you and just be like, thinking about opening a gym?
So the first piece of advice I would give them is, if you're in a market and there's not a Gainzz's, go to Gainzz's, because they want to expand. They want to have more franchisees in more markets. And they were fantastic all along the way. I mean, every step, they're super supportive. They come on site. They, our franchise business consultant, Katie, she's been there with us the whole time, and Billy as well. And every time I send a text, I mean, I have a response within an hour. If I send an email to corporate, I've got a response on what I need within an hour. And, we have access to our parent company, RSG, who's based in Berlin. I mean, we have access to them if we need them, so it's a very receptive and responsive company. They're very supportive of their franchisees. Their franchisee fees are low compared to a lot of franchisee business models out there, but they're great. I mean, Gainzz's has been awesome. So if somebody, says, hey, I want to build a strength training gym, if they really want to have, in my opinion, probably the strongest fitness brand in the world behind them to help with their success, they should go to Gainzz's. If they want to do something smaller on a more boutique level, I think it's entirely possible. A good friend of mine in Miami owns Elevation Fitness. He's got his own brand down there. He started that brand and he's doing great, but he found his market and he knew what he wanted to, cater to down there. And his gyms are, 7,000-8,000 square feet, roughly, something like that, maybe 10 on the new one. But, he knew what he was going to cater to. So I think it's possible to build smaller boutique gyms with your own brand and your own name. But again, you just have to know your audience. I think that you have to know your audience. You have to be willing to do the market research, to get out there in the community, to understand where the gaps are in your community. I just think there's so many niche studios now with cycling and Pilates and everything else. I think you have to figure out what's missing in your community and then, fill that hole. I think it's entirely possible to do in any of these avenues if you just know what your community wants and then you just give them what they want.
You're doing amazing. This is like, I'm just sitting here listening to you and I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be a great idea. This would be a great idea. I think another thing I wanted to touch on, you said you have about 2,000 members, right? 2,000 members in the gym. These are people passionate about fitness. They, keep returning, right? And because I know a lot of your people are like regulars. I see it on your Instagram. What do you think is the biggest challenge that just faces people when they're thinking of joining a gym? Like your average gym goer, like why do you think people come and then they don't come back, or they pay some of these franchise fees that are like $10 a month and then they roll in and then they never return and they really don't find the love of fitness and making fitness fun?
Sure. I think it's all about the environment that they go to, right? I think it's about that, community, to circle back. And that's, it's another piece of advice I would give to someone who's going to build a gym. Make sure you're providing a community for these people, right? Your members. They don't want to just be seen as a member number. Like every single person is greeted on their way into my club and on their way out of my club. If it's their birthday, we know it. We tell them happy birthday. We know most of them, their names. They come up to buy a smoothie. We don't even have to ask them their name to charge their card on file. We know them. So I think getting to know your members and making them feel like they're truly part of something, they're not just, seen as someone paying dues, but like, they're part of your business, of your, a feeling of a family, a fitness family and a fitness community. And, we've had a couple special events. We're going to have a lot more starting this year. So I think getting your members involved, is huge as well. I think that, just making sure your members know that they're appreciated and valued, really makes the difference when somebody feels a certain way about coming to your business. I think it's with any business. When you go into, a Walmart, for example, you just don't feel like you're part of anything. It's just, you're just there and you're just buying groceries. But if you go in your little local mom and pop, small little grocery store on the corner, chances are, if you live in the neighborhood, they're going to know your name. They're going to know who you are. Where do you enjoy going more, right? Somewhere where somebody knows you, or where you're just seen as like a cog in the wheel. And I think that you just really have to understand, human behavior. And I think at the end of the day, we all just want to be seen. We all just want to feel like we're important to someone. And when we go to places, and some people come in and I think they have no family here. They live here alone. They're new to Tampa. They don't know anybody. They come in our gym and we want to make sure that they understand that, this is their place. They can come in here. They can sit in the lounge. They can hang out all day. They can sit at the smoothie bar. They can be in there 3 hours. They can come in, check in 3 times a day if they want to. We've got nice amenities there and nice locker rooms, and
I want to come back to that too.
Hang out.
Yeah, coming back to the amenities, because I've been following it, and I know you mentioned this to me when I met you many months ago. You're like, we're going to put a barber shop in here, and then maybe some type of co-working space, or just some place where people can set up shop for the day. And I was like, I literally would never go to Worx So tell me, like, what are the latest updates? Because I think that's what's so cool. Like, I haven't been to a gym even in PA that has a barber shop in it yet. Maybe like Lifetime Fitnesses, I should say, have those, but like a lot of gyms, I really haven't found them having a barber shop in place.
Not your basic strength training gyms usually don't have that, but yes. So the barbershop is open. They opened a few weeks ago. They are killing it. They've got a full book already. They've got 8 stations in there, so they're doing really well. So our members are excited to have that convenience there, and even their regular clients that aren't members are coming in there to visit them and get their haircut there. So which is a win for them, and it's a win for us because it gives even more people exposure to see our club, that might not have otherwise either known about it or ever come in. So barbershop is open, and then our next big project is going to be the co-working lounge. So that's something we're going to start working on here in a few months, and hope to have that done probably within the next, I don't know. It's hard to put a timeline on things because you just get busy, but 6 to 9 months, middle of the year, something like that is roughly when we'd like to probably have that done.
And that's what I was going to ask you for people who are passionate about fitness, right? They want a place where they can work out, but do you think this is where gyms of the future are heading? I mean, you're starting to really build that space, the co-working lounge inside a really cool fitness facility. You have a barber shop there. Like, where do you think we're going in the next 5-10 years with gyms? Where do they need to be really successful?
They need to be convenient. They need to offer conveniences for their members. So the more they can do in one place, the better. We're going to be adding more cold plunge tubs there. We're going to be putting in meal prep, grab and go coolers with fresh meal prep delivery brought in a couple times a week. That's going in a few weeks. So I think the more services that you can offer them and the more convenient you can make it while also being a pleasant experience is where you're going to win, with a space like this. And, I think too, if it's friendly, your staff makes a huge difference in how people view you as a business owner and view just your business as a whole. So making sure your staff is friendly and well-trained and treats everybody with kindness and respect is huge. And having a clean facility. Cleanliness matters a lot in gyms. And I think a lot of gyms don't focus enough on that, and they end up losing members because, quite frankly, their gyms are dirty. And I think that's something that this demographic, this target demographic these days is just not going to tolerate it.
Yeah, the demographic, I think, like you said, the people who are sometimes content creators, that 30 and up crowd, that we want clean, we want innovative, right? And I think the other thing you hit friendly, and I'll back this up. I remember you said you like to create a space, even though you have 2,000 members, though, but when people come up to your smoothie bar, they're like, I got you, Jimmy. I'll put it on your account, where everybody just knows their name. I was at your gym for one day. I told you I felt like I made all these new best friends. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to follow you on Instagram. And I felt like I was going to that gym for like 2 years. Because then the next day, my friend Jess and I would drop in. It was new people. They're like, oh, hey, Ryan, heard you dropping in. Nice to meet you. And I'm like, huh? I just got here. Like, it was great. Yeah. So I think kudos to you, right? Because that's your leadership, really inspiring your team to say, this is how we want to deliver to our members. Let's talk about your future, though, Kimberlee. Like, where do you want to head with gyms? How many Gold's Gym franchises do you plan to build? Are you just going to stay in Tampa? Are you going to go national? Like, where are we going?
National? No, that's a little too hard. I know now what it takes. So, but our agreement with Gold's is to build 7 clubs in this market. So we're currently looking for location number 2 now, hoping to find that in Tampa. It could take us across the bay over to St. Pete. Possibly that's another target area for us. We own this county. We own the county where St. Pete and Clearwater is, and we own 2 counties south of us, all the way down to Sarasota. So we do plan to expand at least that far. We'll see what happens after that, but Gold's is great. And, if there's more opportunities past that and we get through our 7 clubs, then who knows what else we'll do.
And of course, I work in the marketing and production field. I think something that you do is so genius. You have always been supportive, and you've built a Gold's Gym in Tampa that is so content creator friendly. But from a marketing standpoint, I think it's genius because you welcome these people and they are constantly sharing stuff from your gym on their platforms. And some of these people I followed, they have hundreds of thousands of followers. So how has that helped you? Because I feel like a lot of gym owners, you're missing the mark by not supporting content creators because it's like free marketing.
Yeah. And, I love all my other Gold franchisees out there, but even a lot of them just haven't focused on that demographic and that part of the membership. And, we have, I don't know, around 5,300 followers on Instagram now. And for a gym that's been open 6 months, we've got more than some gyms that are open 10, 15 years. So for us to have that kind of following and this many people who tag us and post us every day has been huge. And there's no reach out there anywhere these days that as big and as fast as social media. So I think that, almost the majority of our marketing dollars has been social media. We've done some Google marketing too, but the majority of it's been social media. And that's where, we have found that we get the most viewership, we get the most responses. And yeah, we're super lucky. We have some pretty mega influencers coming to our gym, and really, really big names in the bodybuilding world and the competitor world, and they post there all the time. And so, for us, it's given us a ton of exposure. We recently had a reel that one of our visitors posted in there that went viral, and it's got about 17 million views on it. So, wow. For the exposure we're getting from the people coming to our gym. And I think too, because it's aesthetically, it looks good. Mm-hmm. It looks good in pictures. It's a different type of building. It's a freestanding building, which is a little unusual for a Gainzz's. The outdoor areas are different. So I think people see that, and it's just something different, right? They've never seen anything like it, and they're excited to post it because that's what they do. So it's really helped us a lot, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think your indoor outdoor areas to work out and incredible. Obviously you are in Tampa, Florida. We're in near Scranton, Pennsylvania. So it's a little cold to work out outdoors, but I think it's such a cool idea. I've seen some gyms try to have it though in Pennsylvania, and they'll just close the wintertime area. The last thing as we wind down, what is the biggest challenge you think you learned about yourself, or the biggest thing you overcame by saying, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going to partner with a group of, other females who were going to be, one of the few female teams really in the world who own a Gold's Gym franchise. What's the biggest thing you took away from this for yourself?
I honestly, sure, there was definitely frustrating moments and challenging moments. I think I probably faced the most challenges, honestly, from the construction trades here in Florida. I think, they showed up and saw me as the owner and a female in there, and they just didn't really expect me to understand, what was happening in there, and to be able to, communicate with them and understand, how to improve things or correct problems. And so that was, I definitely faced some challenges with that. There was a lot of pushback from the guys there on the construction teams, but made it through it. But that was probably one of the biggest challenges. We had a little bit of challenges with the city because we had to do a change of use on the building. So Tampa's known as not being super developer project friendly when it comes to permits. They're a little more on the difficult side. I've been very vocal and transparent about that. I think it needs to be a lot easier for developers, builders, retail owners here to be able to get their permits in a more expeditious manner, but I'll leave that there. But so, we definitely had challenges, but, I didn't doubt that it would be a success from the start. I just knew it would, and I think the thing I've probably learned the most about myself is, it's a little cliche to say if you put your mind to it, you can do it, but it's just actually true. There's a reason why the saying exists. And I think it's very accurate. And I think, for me, I think I learned that I can do even more than I thought I could do. And I pushed myself to just take on this really huge thing here. And, I made it through it, and I plan to do it at least 6 more times. And, my confidence level now is just way different than it was 2 years ago when I first started this process, because I'd never run a gym. I didn't know anything about building a PT program. I didn't know anything about how to actually operate a gym. I had to learn everything from the ground up. So I think that, if somebody wants to do this, they just have to be ready to go all in. This is not a part-time endeavor. This is not something that you can just go and, build a 25,000 square foot gym and be like, yeah, this is just a hobby for me. There's no such thing. You're not going to be successful. You have to go all in. That's the only option.
And I'm sure, though, it was probably overwhelming at one point. You said the investment was $4 million to build this amazing dream space. What would you say to other entrepreneurs? Because, I mean, people take out loans, they have to get capital investments. It can be overwhelming. So whether people want to go into the gym industry, especially for you, you were in a male-dominated field and crushing it now. Like, what would you say to women and men who are like, I have this vision, maybe it's not a gym, it's something else, but sometimes they just hit the brakes when they think, oh my gosh, can I do this?
Yeah. So I would just say there is a way to do it no matter what. Like there is a way, right? You just have to find it. And I've been incredibly blessed with amazing business partners, and they've been very successful in their businesses that they've owned. They've already, owned and sold some before in the past, and then, own one now that's very successful. So they've given me a lot of guidance and taught me things that I didn't know. They're very, very used to having large staffs and employees, which was new for me to have this many employees, which that's also been pretty challenging. It's hard to find good people, right? I mean, when you do, and you hang on to them, but it's tough. It's tough to find people that have as dedicated of a mentality as an owner. It's very difficult. So, I was very blessed to have them as business partners and to give me a lot of mentorship along the way on especially issues like that, employee related and those types of things. So, I think anybody who wants to do this, there's definitely a way, taking on business partners that have more experience than you, that can teach you, and finding somebody who fills gaps, right? Because if your expertise, like my business partners, didn't know as much about construction or fitness as I did, but I didn't know as much about hiring and managing employees and operations, on the financial side as they did. So I think when you have a good marriage of partners that kind of each side fills their own gaps and parts of the equation, then it's always going to be a recipe for success.
And I think I have to just leave you with this, just a little fun stuff. When you talk to people who own a restaurant or they own a pizza shop, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to eat pizza, or I can't be around pizza, I'm around it all day. Like, how do you find the time or the motivation to work out sometimes? Because you're in your gym like nonstop. And can you work out with people bugging you?
No, I don't. I don't work out nearly as much as I used to, which is a problem. So, I'm now that I have a general manager on staff, I'm able to get in a few more workouts a week. But yeah, there's definitely been a challenge finding a time for myself in this. And it is crazy because sometimes I'll come into the gym for the afternoon and I never make it past the front desk. I don't even go all the way through the floor of the gym for 8 or 10 hours, so there's definitely moments when it's like, if I didn't know the gym, I'd have time to work out. Yeah. But that's just part of it.
Favorite workout? I mean, is it legs? Is it chest? Is it arms? What's your thing?
Oh, back day is definitely my favorite. Back and shoulders.
And do you have anyone in the fitness industry you really admire?
There's some of the old school guys. I have a lot of admiration for Arnold. I think he is more than a bodybuilder. I think he's just a good human overall, and has a lot to teach us if we pay attention to the other things he says outside of just bodybuilding. But I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for people like Sidney Gilead, who's won the Olympia many times, and Chris Bumstead, of these people that are a little bit more in our current generation. But I think there's a lot of people out there in the fitness world that I think deserve a lot of praise for just being dedicated to the sport and to the craft, and has a lot to teach us about staying on task and staying dedicated and motivated, and how when you really dig in and you go all in, you're going to win, right? So they're proof of that as well.
And you have 6 other Gold's Gym locations you plan to launch in your market in and around the Tampa area. Be honest though, do you love what you're doing now every day? I mean, like, you look back at your life and all these other careers you had, are you thinking now you're like, God, I love this?
Yeah, I really do. And the thing is, I still do enjoy real estate. So this also gives me, a little opportunity to still dabble in that, because I wrote our lease for the building where we have currently, and we'll continue to manage the transactions of our future locations. So that's kind of fun. And then I'll manage the construction all the way through as well. So I still get to dabble in those other industries that I enjoy. But yeah, being a gym owner, it's the best part of my career to date. So I definitely don't want that to change.
Love it. The one and only Kimberlee Curtis. Look, if you're ever in Tampa, check out Gold's Gym Tampa, Worx, and her other gyms. Follow them on Instagram. Your Instagram handles again are
Gold'sGymTampa.gasworks.
yeah, like it's insane. I love to see all of the innovation you're doing, and I'm going to be visiting soon. I plan to visit when you open these other gyms because I can't wait to see what you're doing with the other 6. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, can't wait for you to come down and visit again. You're welcome anytime. We love having you.
All right, Kimberlee Curtis in the house. Thank you so much. You've shattered so many barriers. You've inspired me. I love how you've leveled up like the fitness industry, I have to say, like looking what you've done. And I think a lot of people could take a page out of your book to really help people get to the next level. So thank you for hanging out.
Thank you so much.
See you next
Thank
time,
you.
everybody.
That's so sweet.
I appreciate you too. And everybody, thank you for being a part of the Ryan Leckey Show. I'll catch you next time.
Here we go, buddy.